Hello, I'm Edition Toycat, and welcome back to an episode of the Minecraft Bedrock Updated Adventures Let's Play. This is the weekly update as to what's been going on, both in my survival Minecraft world, as well as life, the universe, and everything in between those things. But today, there are some creepers hiding outside my house. Today, I wanted to talk about something kind of important, because I'm going to be getting a lot of enchanted books. I really want to get some unbreaking books, and although the best way is usually to use some villagers and some mending, today I figured, let's get a nice enchanted book collection, and let's do so I can get myself an unbreaking book for this sword, and way more importantly than this sword, let's get unbreaking on my elytra finally. It is such an important thing if you want to use your elytra a bunch, and let's do both those things by heading over to my armory. Because today, although I'm going to be working on one of my longer term projects of lighting up the entire Minecraft world, or at least the 360 size portion of it that still exists, surrounded by borders, today I'm going to be lighting up that entire portion of the world. But first, I wanted to work on something which is a bit more long term. I think doing long term things mixed in with your short-term things is usually a good idea for any Minecraft world if you intend to play for a while. And today I want to get a lot of enchanted books, so many so in fact that I'm going to actually extend the chests of both enchanted books that are good and enchanted books that are low level. I mean, I'm not saying that Aqua Affinity 1 or Knockback 2, actually Knockback 2 is okay, but Knockback 1 by itself is not a very useful enchantment. So we put them all in here because I guess collecting all the enchantments one day might be some fun. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be grabbing a lot of those enchantments today using my levels. Because I totally do follow the traditional logic most of the time that the best way to enchant is to get to level 30, come over and here enchant, use up 3 of your levels, or slightly less if you don't like what you're getting, and then come here and do it again. As you can see, I have 30 levels, and then I enchant this book, and no matter what I enchant it with, I mean, assuming it's going to be on the higher end things, it's going to use up some of our XP, and it stops us getting these level 30 enchantments. I really do want a featherfall, set of things, so I can put on some boots later, and having featherfall mixed with impaling for some reason is going to be kind of handy. But then I've got 27 experience points. That means when I come back to this exact same enchantment table, I won't be able to get the level 30 enchantment no matter how good that it is. And in this case, Fire Aspect might be real nice. I actually think Quickshire, of the 3 of these, I think I'll take Power because Fire Aspect isn't perfect by itself. But you can see how you can pick a better book or you cannot. But the point is, having those high level options is, being locked off to you is kind of bad. And for most people, this means unless you have an experience farm, which on Bedrock, those are slightly fewer and further in between, but unless you have an experience farm of some form, basically you just have to go away and come back, etc, etc. But because I have this chest right here, filled with enchanted goodies from just across the world, mostly pillager raids, I have a bunch of iron armor, I have a bunch of just stuff that has come from all over the world, and I'm going to be disenchanting this today. A lot of people forget about disenchanting because it's not a very useful mechanic, historically speaking, but as of the Village and Pillage update, you can use the grindstone, you can take any piece of gear, and you can disenchant it, turn it into a normal piece of gear, and get yourself a little bit of experience. The experience depends on how good the enchantments are. I mean, mending is a really good one, for instance, so is blast protection, so we get a little bit more for both of those. I know it feels like a waste to get rid of mending, but it's on an iron piece of armor. I really don't care about it. So we grind up all of this gear, and you're going to see how slowly but surely my experience is going up as a result of doing this. I have literally pieces of gear I have no intention of using, but yet, in spite of that fact, we already have gotten ourselves almost all the way up to level 30. Let's just add one more thing to that list, actually 2 more things. Both of these chest plates, let's throw them both in here. Let's grind away this Thorns enchantment, and let's grind away this, projectile protection enchantment, and all of a sudden, okay, we're still not there. Okay, one more, the iron shovel and this iron shovel, just to be sure, we'll get ourselves over this goal line, and now we disenchant both of these, and what do we have? Oh, you heard it just there. Level 30. Fun fact, you get a nice noise when we hit level 30. And yeah, basically now we have ourselves a bunch of iron gear, but more importantly, we have ourselves some lapis that we can throw in here with a book, and we can now get that rare enchantment that we want. In this case, protection 3, which is pretty good, although you have to combine 2 of them to get protection 4. Protection is a solid enchantment, one of the best in, I would argue for armor, there's nothing really replacing it. So now we've got protection here, and we've also got protection there. Let's just combine them together. We don't want 2 protection 3s. We want protection 4. Let's just be real with ourselves. And now we can combine both of those together. And wow, we've got ourselves a really nice book that we can put on any piece of armor we want. Do these boots need it? They don't, fortunately. All of these. Actually, I think we can put it on the boots as well as all of this stuff. And instead of fire protection, it might make more sense to have just regular protection 4 on there. Okay, we can't do that. It doesn't let you replace the fire protection for some reason. Huh. I wonder what the logic is. Is it too expensive? It doesn't even say. That's not my issue. But what is my issue is that now I have all of this iron gear, and I'm about to have some more iron gear. What do you do with all of this gear after you've unenchanted it? I mean, diamond stuff, sure, you can enchant when you're done with it, but what about all this iron stuff? This is one of my tips I love to give out, because it really is going to change your Minecraft world, because a lot of people grind a lot of iron gear, and as well as chain gear, from, zombies farms and skeleton farms, stuff like that. The pro tip to do right here is you just want to get yourself some coal or something for a furnace. Actually, let's use a lava bucket. It's inefficient, but what isn't these days? And then what we can do is we can... Actually, no, let's grab some iron from here. Let's make a hopper to make our life even easier. So 5 iron, I think, is the recipe for a hopper, plus a chest. We'll see if I'm right about that one. So, what we're going to do is we're going to place ourselves a hopper just on top of this. We then place all of our iron gear into this hopper, one by one, and it slowly smelts up into oblivion, giving us, handily enough, as you see in 8 seconds. Man, I should probably make it a blast furnace or something, right? But yeah, you get iron nuggets, which is basically nothing, but if you have no use for an iron chest plate, you do have some use for an iron nugget. It's 1/9 of a iron ingot, which does have some value, although admittedly I'm using 5 iron to smelt this up. So, the value is something you have to work out for yourself, but it's super, super handy because as we disenchant all this gear, one by one, bit by bit, we then get some iron nuggets, which are super handy in their original form, of course. Let's disenchant all this stuff too. Let's just be real with ourselves. All goes into the disenchanting grinder. And what we end up with is an inventory full of ready to recycle iron and gold gear, because gold you can do the same thing. Same with chain. The only one that is entirely useless is leather, although you can repair it and maybe use that for something else. But you can also do this if you really want to with your enchanted books, which is a way of, funnily enough, getting some more books in you. And we can use these same books once we reach level 30 to, wow, make some more of those, enchanted things, which is basically a way of recycling pretty much anything in Minecraft. Get a book that you don't like. I mean, looting 2 by itself might not be great, but with piercing, maybe you're into that. I mean, personally, I'm not a big fan of, the piercing enchantment. I feel like it's one of the dumbest. For solo at least, maybe in multiplayer you can make an argument, but, there are very few situations where I want to hit multiple mobs at once. But if that's not you, you can change that. If you want, we're going to throw all of our gold in here. You don't just have to collect the iron ingots, which are iron nuggets, which I personally love. You can collect some gold ones instead, or collect both. You can use a furnace system of multiple furnaces. But the point is, one of the things that's been made more and more possible as Minecraft goes forwards is they allow you to recycle more of your stuff, which is kind of cool, right? Who doesn't love taking something they used to like, or something they don't like in the slightest, and turning it into something that they do, even in tiny quantities. I mean, these 18 iron nuggets only turn out to be, 2 iron, these 18, the iron nuggets turn into 2 iron ingots if you really want them to. Yep, that's kind of nice, I guess. I mean, 2 iron ingots is better than 0 iron ingots, but also if we turn them back into iron nuggets, one of the things I've always thought is kind of cool is you can also use them for lanterns, and that is where today comes in, because, again, even though I'm going to be disenchanting a lot of, stuff across my world, as well as sorting the disenchanted stuff into these various chests around the world, I have a lot of shovels. Too many shovels, some would say. I would say that's talking wrongly, though. But yeah, the intention is to, sort across the world and to grab all of the enchanted gear and to disenchant it right now to get some value from it, because I need some iron and some gold nuggets again. So let's go do precisely that. In case you're curious as to where I get all of my iron stuff from, it mostly is pillager raids. You have to go through a lot of them. There's a lot of waves. Most of them drop some amount of iron. And as a result, I get an entire inventory full of the stuff, sometimes enchanted books. And then also we got this entire shulker box. We're also going to be grinding up into iron nuggets and indeed into experience. So let's go do that now. We'll make a stop for the pillagers. Okay, if you're on the way anyway, why not? Holy Lord. Small side note here, but I've had a Vex floating in the sky for quite some time. It never really moves to attack me. It just kind of chills there in the sky. The pillager raid that he came from has been long dead, and yet he remains. Oh, he's coming down slightly, and he's going back up. We'll ignore him. We'll come back to him when it's time. In case you are curious, by the way, and you totally should be, your odds of getting Unbreaking free, despite it being one of the most useful enchantments, it's also one of the hardest to just get by directly enchanting a book. Getting it on an individual, axe or an individual, shovel or any piece of gear, it's actually relatively high. But if you want to get it on something to apply it to something unnaturally, it's actually very hard to get that enchantment. It's about a 5% chance. I tried playing around with the enchantment numbers. I spent a long time trying to find the best way to get a certain enchantment, and there's lots of enchantments that you can kind of manipulate the levels that you enchant at, but that does not work for this one. In the case of, if you want to get Unbreaking, you can sometimes get it in the level 25 up, category, and you can save levels and do more at a time that way. But if you want to get your hands on this enchantment, you really do just have to kind of roll through, wait for that 5% chance to appear, and we'll do that by doing a bunch of level 1s for now, just so we can try our very best and believe in ourselves. So, Blast Protection, not the right one, we'll go for Power. Let's look at it again. Is that unbreaking yet? No, it's not. We'll go for Smite. And you just have to like really continuously power through, and that's true for a lot of enchantments. There's a lot of things in life and indeed in Minecraft where if you want to do it a way, because obviously, you know, like actually any way you want to get a repeatable, you know, if you want to get unbreaking on a book to apply to things, you have to do a lot of slogging, whether it's with a villager or whether it's with these dudes right here. But there's going to be a lot of just check the enchantment. Is it right? Nope. Okay, try again. Throw it away. And it is going to be a messy process that takes a lot of your stuff. And oh, I didn't even check it that time. Let's hope it wasn't unbreaking. Statistically, it wasn't. And but yeah, it's kind of interesting. This kind of slog, this grind away, this continuous thing that you know, like it does. As soon as it happens, you kind of forget about it. But there is a big process that happens in making that happen. Wait, did that have mending, or am I crazy? It is no way it had mending. You know, let's not even kid ourselves that it did. But I am curious as to what I did see there. So let's now put all of these books away, and let's re-pick this stuff up, shall we? So yeah, we got Protection, Power, Feather Falling, Impaling, Piercing is what I read. You know, there's a lot of enchantments in Minecraft, and some of them sound very similar to some of the other ones. But yeah, trying to get Unbreaking, it's a bit of a slog, and sometimes you don't appreciate the slog, but it's one of those things that you just gotta do sometimes. And in this case, I really want a better Elytra, because I lost mine, I fell off the end. It's a long time ago, and I haven't fully recovered. You know, it's a thing that happened in the past, right? And speaking of things that happened in the past, because this Let's Play is also an update as to what's been going on in my life and such. You know, my past week has been kind of like the same as every other week. I feel like, you know, for a while the Let's Play, like, I like the idea of it being like, oh yeah, it's like the equivalent of a vlog as well, so you can know what's going on with Toycat. But like at this point, I realized that like, you know, the number of people who care about that clearly either isn't as high as I assumed, or like, you know, during these times, what is life? There's no interesting tales to tell, etc. And that's kind of what live streams for anyway. So I guess we could skip straight ahead into like what's been on my mind, because you know, the past is something I'm hugely interested in. I find history to be a fascinating subject, and yet in spite of that, also, I don't think it's going to happen today. I don't think we're getting it, despite all of this disenchantment, which seems like a bummer on the surface, and definitely is a bummer to me at least. We're running out of books. I don't see it yet. Come on, give me that Unbreaking. Okay, no. So we didn't get Unbreaking. We just got a lot of level 1 enchantments, and that's okay. We also used up all of our XP. It's gonna be a whole mess to put these books away, but that's fine too. So we have the hope that on this next book we at least see Unbreaking 2. Maybe we should just like swing for Unbreaking 2 and call it a day. You know, we'll have to make that decision in a little bit, because for now, let's throw away all of our last attempt. Let's put our books back in this chest. We have a lot more bad enchantments than good enchantments, but that's the nature of anything. When you're sorting through things, you're going to see a lot of things that you're not a fan of, and you're going to see a lot of things you are a fan of. Isn't life beautiful in that way? Isn't the diversity of things delightful? But also, let's disenchant this axe now. You'll see how, by the way, at lower levels, you'll get many more levels because your experience goes further. Just a fun little fact that maybe you didn't think about. But yeah, grinding up all this stuff is now kind of useful, because I didn't just get experience. I didn't just get attempts to do something. You also get the little bit of recycling, the few iron nuggets that come at the end of all of that, which also come with experience, which is kind of a beautiful little top to all of this. We can now combine with our torches and make some lanterns, because you better believe I want to do that. So yeah, today I'm going to be continuing the Light Up the World project. We're going to be using a few lanterns in here, of course, as well as a bunch of cobblestone walls, because yeah, this is one of my biggest, I would say, ongoing projects to light up the entirety of this like 360 size world. It's a very fun thing that you can see has made some really good progress. There's a few areas where there isn't progress, and that's why a zombie walked in me earlier, and also why there's a skeleton here, because I guess this needs to be covered up correctly. Honestly, I need to place some ice back there. But, you know, the second best thing you can do rather than fixing something is to cover it up and pretend it never happened and/or is not an issue. And that is my intended solution right here. Wow, look at that. Now we've got all this land back, and we can put the torches where they need to be. Like one right over here, and one right over, like, here-ish, I guess. And, yeah, my intention, slowly but surely, is to not only get some grass back here, but to make this entire world safe, no matter what time of day. So if we want to do intensive projects that require me to look at inventory stuff, I won't get blown up by a creeper, I won't get blown up by whatever else, and that's always a nice thing to aim for, isn't it? So yeah, torches everywhere. That's what we're going to be doing. As we talk about the thing that I've been thinking about a lot, because this week, something that's been coming up non-stop, like in, surprisingly enough, in my country as well, but it's been like a global phenomenon, or, you know, by that, it really means like the countries that we consider the West and that we care about. People, you know, like the truth is like, you know, there's a whole world out there that we don't care about except when it's convenient, right? And, you know, but like, okay, in the countries that constitute the entirety of the world, and by that I mean something like 75% of my audience demographics, it's been a pretty crazy time, huh? And one of the things, you know, like, obviously it's been interesting to watch from the sidelines, but the thing that's been most interesting of all is like, all of a sudden, you know, as someone who really likes history has come into the limelight as like a serious thing that can, you know, that can help and that is bad, you know, and that can, you know, like, it is important to look at, etc., etc. And personally, whenever this happens, I love it. I'm like, yeah, people are gonna learn about the world, and we're gonna, you know, avoid the mistakes we made in the past, and, you know, be better people than we were back then. And, you know, there's a few things that like are super obvious that everyone's kind of on board with, like, I don't know, someone pulls down like, you know, like a statue to someone that you never cared about or knew about, and you're like, yeah, I'm not ready. You know, like, that's like the worst thing that, like, you know, happens, right? That's like, okay, so that he was a bad person, and now instead of not knowing about him, everyone is familiar about him just because of the news thing. But now no longer will people learn about this thing, because it's no longer going to be a thing that exists in the world. Like, it's a one-time big awareness event to remove something, and then that thing is kind of like gone, right? And you can argue about it both ways. You could argue like people look at a statue of someone who's like super, you know, like, you know, let's just say they're a bad person. Let's ignore why, because I mean, actually, slavery is like pretty. Again, these days, no one is like pro-slavery, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure at least. But you know, like you still get the world of like, okay, well, you know, like there's the arguments of like for the time, etc., etc. We'll just ignore those for the sake of now, because even though like, you know, there's valid arguments to be had there, we'll just say like, if you're a bad person from the past, you don't get to be represented in the now. But the problem with it as an argument, to me at least, has always been like, well, one, I mean, like, you know, society always has changing standards. We have this legal concept that I think is super fair that's like, oh yeah, you can't be, you know, forward laws don't judge you in the past. If the government does something that makes something illegal, you can't be, you know, like, prosecuted based on, you know, for something you've done in the past, even if it's the same action. Like, you know, if they make smoking illegal tomorrow, I can smoke today, a-okay. If they make playing Minecraft illegal tomorrow and like, you know, an act that is not okay, then it's okay that I've been playing it for the last, you know, like 7 years here on YouTube, because again, like, generally speaking, you know, like, you can't implement laws and cases retroactively, because otherwise, you know, like, again, people operate under the laws that they know at the time. Like, there's actually this fun assumption, like, I learned about this maybe like 5 years ago, and it shocked me as like a teenager as to like, it's an unreasonable expectation that we all have, that the way the world works is that you need to know the laws of the country you're in. It's assumed when the police stop you, you can't plead ignorance to the law as a reason to, you know, as a reason to break it, right? I guess the police is a touchy subject. Now, when an authority of whatever form stops you, when a, you know, like, whatever thing is, you know, when someone stops you, they assume you know the rules. Not knowing the rules is a really bad defense to breaking them, especially when it's like an egregious violation, right? Like, oh, because, you know, like, you know, I was never taught that murder was illegal. Well, someone's still dead, and we still need to fix this, right? Like, you know, like, find the balance of, you know, the families and the compensation and the, you know, you going away for a long time because you're a dangerous individual who apparently wants to murder people. We could talk about that later too, right? The whole, like, if you make murder legal, will people murder people? Actually, it's funny, like 3 of the topics I've discussed in the last, like, year or so have all been, like, hot big issues. Like, one I mentioned was, like, how wording has become a serious, like, it's a genuine, like, battleground now. Like, oh yeah, like, which, you know, there are words that are the good words, and, you know, like, sorry, there are words which you have to say, and even if you express a good sentiment, if you do it in the wrong words, that's, like, a real bad thing that, like, you get chastised for on the internet these days. And, you know, again, I can't even bring up what it is, or some people will be like, oh, someone taught me about that recently. and if you say the wrong set of words, even on the message is something we all agree with, if you say it in different words, it's not okay. Like, you know, actually, okay, I'm gonna reference my previous self. I'm not saying it anymore. It's never been an issue that's it's never been as big of an issue in the United Kingdom of Great Britain, Northern Ireland. This is a issue I observed merely. You have to be very touchy about this, right? But I mentioned this idea that the words that you use can have the exact same meaning in practice, but have a different meaning kind of behind the scenes to whoever, is hearing them, right? Like, you can say precisely the same message, or like at least the same sentiment, but because you're using different words, people who use the words that aren't, the same good set of words as people, they approve of, they're like, oh, those are the people who disagree with me. They're saying the same message, but they're saying it in different words. And this is something, it sounds super dumb. If I was to say this is a real thing that's happened, at this point in time, I would find it crazy. But it's something we're seeing more and more because social media has a very, young bias, which as a result has a very particular set of beliefs and ideals. And because those ideals are so similar across people, instead of uniting across the fact that, like, yeah, we all vaguely agree on the same thing, instead it's like a war of, like, okay, but who believes it the most? Who believes it the strongest? Do you believe the bad version of this thing or the good version? It's pretty intense that, like, you can agree with something, and, like, still be chastised as not being a strong enough believer. Or even something I've seen kind of crazy is, like, oh, yeah, if you don't support a thing, you're basically as bad as people who, you're basically as bad as people who are, actively are against it, You're with us or against us, which is, like, a fine strategy if you want to, like, recruit people to your cause, but it's the worst strategy in the system of, because right now, for the first time in history, we live in, like, thankfully, mostly democratic states. It's really cool. We get to decide our future collectively via a ballot box, etc. And, this is a cool development in humanity as far as I'm concerned. Maybe you disagree. Maybe democracy is the worst thing to ever happen to you. But it means that because you need the majority of people to agree on something, it's a good idea not to say you're with us or against us, because, even though a lot of people who already are on your side are like, yeah, we don't have to accept the impures, the people who aren't as good as we are, the reality is in the end, you turn away people who should be on your team, who should want to get the same things done, but just because they don't agree 100% of the way you're saying it at that right time, then they're, like, turned off from your team. If I was, like, going to take the conspiracy angle on this, I would say that, like, this is something that, like, people who have the opposite opinion really like. When, your opposition doesn't coalesce around one opinion and instead coalesces around the least popular or, like, the least united form of that, that's how, like, divide and conquer. It's the strategy that has been used in the world forever. Like, don't, even if the majority of people agree on something, if they disagree on its implementation and therefore, they're split on where, what their exact opinion is, they're weaker as individual groups than they are as a collective. Like, weakening people by splitting them up as a common thing, and people, like, play straight into it as, like, well, I don't care if it's a weak strategy. What I care about is following my ideas. And again, it's super sad because, like, I get why it's a cool thing to say, why it's a fun soundbite to throw out there. Also, it's kind of weird that cobblestone posts don't attach to things, but whatever. We're lighting up this little area with lanterns, by the way, just to make this area a little bit prettier, like, add a little bit of emphasis towards the Lost Woods, which still very much unfinished. Don't worry. It's the one part of the world I refuse to show off in videos, and it's very much nothing special, I assure you. But it's one of those things that, like, maybe one day people can enjoy that if they ever download the world themselves. Also, this is a block. One further this way, apparently. But yeah, so basically, like, another thing that's been like kind of interesting to me is, like, so again, in this past week, because we're literally, I see, like, again, on the socials, I don't participate. It's not my, I personally feel like throwing people always act like, yeah, I'm doing the right thing right now by sharing, like, by talking politics on a, on, like, a gaming channel, or talking politics on a Minecraft channel people come to in times when they're feeling sad or depressed or whatever. But, that's me doing a good thing, and it's like, well, people know where to find these things. No one's ever like, I don't know what's happening in the world right now. Darn, if only my favorite Minecraft YouTuber would throw their opinion. No, it's a thing you do to indulge yourself, right? Like, talking about, politics, talking about current events is something you do as a way to, like, share your opinion. Sometimes there's something so crazy that you need to talk about it, and that's fine, that's a-okay. But there's this, like, when people, like, kind of pretend that it's, like, it's not for them. It's, like, it's just because it's essential. It's a thing that needs to be done. It's a bit like, well, I don't know if that is so true. And, you know, like, maybe that's just me being jaded from the fact that, like, the truth is some people will like what you have to say, and some people... also, should we put the wall here? It feels weird to put it slightly higher up, but I guess so. There we go. Look at this. We got a nice little pathway right here. I like it. I don't know. I've personally always had this thing of like, you know, it's pretty, you know, like on social, on platforms where we have this situation where you're, you know, like everyone is specifically reached for a specific thing, and everyone has access to a whole range of things, and they can try and cater like, oh yeah, I'm going to start following food channels. I'm going to start following these. To kind of like disregard this and be like, you know what, even if you're trying to get a break from the world, I'm going to throw you right back into it. Maybe that's me being like the weird one. Maybe I'm the odd one out. I mean, I definitely am based on the current state of things. I don't know. I've always just like made this mental thing to myself of like, okay, you know, sometimes there are political issues or whatever issues that will get you charged that you really want to talk about. And then you've got to make the like mental payoff grid. We have to put like torches under these stairs, by the way. I've just realized that's a way to light these stairs up correctly. Which is strange, but you know, stranger things have happened. So now oh, there's a little, a little hidden thing down there. We placed that back, and funnily enough, because stairs conduct light, now we have lit up the stairs very slightly more. And now we go over to here, and we do the same thing. And it's very strange, but this is how we light things up. But yeah, I personally have always felt like, you know, what would my, you know, like, would you rather hear my intense, nuanced opinions on an exact issue, like, oh, let's talk about the, you know, the abortion debate. Let's talk about, you know, the militarization of police in America. Let's talk about, you know, like any of those issues, like, you know, how much are you really excited versus how much better would you feel if I told you a joke? Because what begins with F and ends with uck. And I know what you're thinking, but you're incorrect, because what begins with W and ends with hat instead. See, that's funny. It's an anti-joke. You think it's a real joke, but then it shows you who's boss, and it confirms that it is in fact not a joke. Yeah, I don't know, like, the... do you like my joke, by the way? I think it was pretty good. I think that was a pretty stand-up example of a joke. Have I just had a missing stair here forever and just never fixed it? I think I probably have. You know, so many questions in this world sometimes. That definitely has to go up there as one of those. But yeah, I don't know. I've just, I've had this on my mind a lot. A lot of people say that, like, you know, any art form is inherently political, and therefore, in a way, social media and, you know, like, these videos, you know, they take me a long time to make. I put a lot of effort every day into making these things. They are a form of art, and therefore they are inherently influenced by, you know, my thoughts and my biases, etc. But I then think, like, well, does that mean that it's the, you know, like, even though that is definitely true, like, the videos I make are going to be influenced on my world perspective, but that doesn't mean that you should throw away and be like, well, there's literally nothing I can do about it. I just have to spew about every single thing I ever want to. It's the only, you know, it's the only thing you can do. But yeah, maybe that's just my craziness, maybe my policy of, like, trust that people can find the right path for themselves is dumb. Maybe you shouldn't trust people. Maybe all people are bad people. It's you know, it's a big thing that I pondered so many times. Like, you know, and I guess it's another one of those things that people are kind of coming up with right now. I wouldn't say they're coming to particularly philosophical answers, but people are having the debate of, like, are people bad? You know, like, can an entire class of people be a bad class of people, or, you know, are there people who do bad actions? Or is it kind of like an in-between of, like, there are circumstances that lead people to be disproportionately bad? You know, these are the fun debates we can have. But personally, I think people are pretty good. They want to do good. And that without my guidance, you'll still be kind of great. And if you want to hear my opinions on anything that aren't, you know, that isn't the precise same as going on in the world, because something I've always tried my channel is not to just be the exact copy of the world. You know, we make Minecraft videos, but they're not the same as all the other Minecraft videos. And every time, you know, like when I made seed videos, I tried to differentiate them at first. You know, my update news, I've always done slightly different to everyone else. I don't like the idea of being exactly the same as everyone else in the world. And I don't think that's something that adds too much value. But that's my personal take on things. Maybe you disagree. That's fine. And that's see, that's something. Maybe you disagree, maybe that's fine. That is something that is lost in the current world, right? But you know, that's my opinion on you, and that's okay if you do disagree. But you know what else is okay? Actually, you know what isn't okay? Because history's been invoked a lot recently as like, you know, like like people are looking at history and being like, well, here's this thing that is history, but you know, it's not just history, it's bad history. And it's like, well, it's a good point to bring up. Yeah, there's lots of things in history, that are like that involve bad people, and it's like, here's this new thing we learned about this very common thing in history, and therefore we're gonna bring this thing down. You know, like what we're gonna do is we're gonna try and erase this monument to that bad history. And it's like, on the surface, that's a pretty reasonable thing to want. Like, you know, if you found there was a statue of the one person we can all vaguely agree is bad is Hitler, right? If there was a statue of Hitler somewhere, you'd be like, oh wait, the H-Man somewhere. I don't think you meant to say his name on YouTube. But if there was a statue of him somewhere, you'd be like, oh yeah, that is bad, probably. But I mean, actually, is it so bad, you know? Like, is anyone going to look at that and be like, you know, I was actually on the fence about whether or not an entire, race of people, and it's not just actually that one race of people, there's also a lot of other people who died as a result of German aggression in Europe, but that's usually brushed aside. People like to use the 6 million figure, but that's just Jews that died. There's like dozens of millions directly, as well as many more indirectly. But anyway, you know, leave that to the side for now. Just be like, oh yeah, I actually didn't think he was a good person, but then I saw this statue of him, and I was like, well, guess he can't be so bad. Guess he's an alright fella after all. No one usually looks at that. You look at someone and you're like, huh, this was an interesting person. If you don't dive into it anymore, you probably forget about it later that day. Like, I've seen many statues. There's a statue I walk past every day to get to college. I can picture it perfectly. Can't tell you who the person is or why they're famous. There's a statue that I've literally read 3 or 4 times to 3 or 4 different people. I think they're really important locally. Still, you know, like, I don't have a great impression on who they are. If they're a good person or not, like, it's not an assumed thing that they are, right? When did it become assumed that every historical figure was good? I don't know when that was a thing. But the scary thing to me is that, like, now we're looking at history and being like, oh yeah, we need to make sure that we're not glorifying bad parts of history. And that's, you know, that is something, again, that is good. No one should be taking the World War II or the USSR and being like, these places were really good, actually. Although actually there is a portion of people on the internet that do precisely both those things. You know, there are neo-Nazis, there are tankies, there are like real people who are like, well, you know what? Sure, you kill a few 100 million, you know, you kill 100 million people, but who doesn't do that in exchange for being able to finally mechanize a country as as big as the USSR? But anyway, yeah, no, let's dive off that to the side. The really important thing to me, the lesson from history that I feel like has been missed out on, because we're seeing right now, like, an interesting debate I never thought people would have is like, you know, what if there was just no I no, people don't say no government, but they're like, what if there was just no power enforcement structure? Something I think I mentioned before. I think mentioned this last week. I've never had a good interaction with the police. It's only been, like every time something's bad happened to me, it's like, oh, not there, not helpful. Every time something like the minorest of infraction, every time like they've interacted with me, it's usually been like, oh yeah, there's this minor thing we'd like you to fix here. And that's the UK police, which are generally regarded as some of the better police, because we don't need to do the gun stuff, etc., etc. But we're doing this debate in a way that's like, you know what? What if we just, entirely, started again and we made a system that wasn't about, because right now the issue is like when you have judicial equality, equality before the law, you don't always have equality in practice. What if we removed that and instead made it go after specific goals? We made it go after specific things. And it's a really scary concept when people say like, oh yeah, equality before the law is a bad thing. Because even though, and in fact, that should be that's like a frightening sentence by itself. Like, you know what? This form of equality really is bad. I think having everyone be treated equally, even if that leads to certain groups being overtreated, that's a real bad thing. But the problem with both of these ideas, like the idea of not being equal before the law, instead having different sanctions depending on who you are, where you're at, like trying to base it on all these factors, because you know, again, the circumstances of your birth will affect your likelihood, to commit something that right now we consider a crime, which is, you know, like super scary stat by itself. That like, you know, what does that say about free will? Or, you know, I guess the thing people dive to is like, what does it say about the way police operate? But personally, I think it really is like the what does that say about free will? Unless you're saying that all of these things that we have proof of, all the victims are all making it up, it's all a big conspiracy. There are, you know, bad things that happen for everyone. I mean, no one wants. I think I made a mistake here somewhere. Yeah, if this is 207, this should be 213, which is here. So let's remove all of these blocks. You know, it's so easy to make a mistake on this grid, but it's always important that we fix that mistake. You know, mistakes are important to fix, I agree. But yeah, both these things combined, like, trying to, you know, once you start to... Because, again, looking at the world and trying to use inequality as a way to fix equality always seems like a great idea. And it's something that we've seen happen time and time again historically. This is something that's been on my mind a lot this week, is like people look at, you know, people are like, yeah, we have a moment we can finally, you know, like rid ourselves of these things that have held us back, you know, trying to, you know, win over votes and, you know, trying to, you know, like, you know, use, you know, like, you know, the justice and stuff like that, rather than trying to have fairness, right? Rather than trying to have these things. Instead, it's like, well, we'll just get the right people, you know, because people right now are, you know, doing things for a good cause. Like, again, no one is against the idea that people should not be killed because of the color of their skin. I don't think so, at least. Again, like, it's, if there are people who are like, you know, in response to the whole, you know, Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter thing, like, they both mean the same thing. Everyone agrees human life is valuable. But instead, you need to find the people who are like, actually, you know, Black lives don't matter. Find those people. And you need, you know, you need to find those, and you need to convince those people, or if you don't want, even if you don't want to convince them, those are the bad people that you want to like have not on your side, right? Not the people who are like, I don't know, what if everyone's on board with something? But the interesting thing is that like right now everyone's on board with the cause. There's like one thing we've come together and we've all like agreed on, like, yeah, even worldwide. There is in the UK even, like it's agreed that like, yeah, that's messed up. Although I'd argue we agreed even before. But we found this, like, one big point of agreeal, and now everyone's, like, trying to turn that one point into their own points, you know? And, you know, some people are succeeding pretty wildly at this. Some people are convincing people that, like, you know, now we've done this, here's my other set of wild policies that I had before this, that, like, again, they might be super viable. You don't know for sure until it's implemented if something is a good idea or if it's not. Even the things that I might find super, you know, super displeasing, super... distasteful, super impractical, whatever else my thing is, they might work. They might be great ideas. But the problem is that generally speaking, you want people to agree on them. You want people to all go on with them. And to say, you know, to try and force people to agree with you is something that hasn't gone well pretty historically, right? Like, the idea of using force to get something through as opposed to, you know, mutual consent. You know, consent is something we should generally all agree is a good idea. But the scary thing is that, like, if you try to use force, if you try to, you know, like, use power to make something happen instead of, again, all the things, which is historically for most of history, it's how it's been. But when we've changed from a, you know, democratic-based way to a force-based way, it generally hasn't gone so well. Again, I need to go to sleep. I heard a phantom. But you know, the easiest example to point to would be like, yeah, propaganda was widespread 80 years ago. I mean, just like to get World War II past the minds of the voters, because it's something no one actually wanted. We made a bunch of like trickery about how, you know, like we used it ourselves, but also the enemies used it to convince them that like, oh yeah, what's really happening here is a good thing. How did a country of people who probably were good people come together, you know, like, unless you think that all Germans are bad people inherently, how did they come together to, you know, make a, you know, extermination, you know, camps, etc.? How did a country of, you know, like several hundred million, I think it was actually like 100-ish, it was just over 100 million actually, but like, you know, the USSR, how did they come together and start like just accepting that like, yeah, some starvations are necessary to keep the country together, but like, you know, what isn't? It's for the greater good, etc. These are the questions you need to look at in history and question. And I think, to me, the biggest thing is this idea that like, when you want something, when there's a feeling that like it's the right thing, even though you can't force it through under the current power structure, the idea is like, well, make a new power structure, make a new system of government that makes this work. When something's changing the rules to suit you seems like a great idea, but as soon as you set the precedent that changing the rules to make something works, as soon as you say, yeah, the way of doing things is dumb and pointless, as soon as you say that, you open the door not only for people you agree with to make things happen without going through the whole process, because something I always thought when I was younger is like, man, change happens so slowly. It seems like every politician out there is just trying to, no one's actually changing anything. It's all about the status quo. A lot of people have this idea in their head. They're like, yeah, status quo, man. Like, why is, no one's really changing anything. They're all just the same, man. But they all actually believe inherently different things. It's just that the process for change is, it allows for people who disagree to have, strong voices. We have an opposition, system that does largely work and allow scrutiny and fixing, at least in the system that I live in, and hopefully you do too. These torches are way off compared to the grid. But, the idea that, as soon as you make it acceptable for the idea of, oh, yeah, you don't actually need to get everyone on board, you can just do that all later. You don't just give the power to people you agree with, you give the power to people you strongly disagree with. The whole system of governance for any country, even though, equality is something that is, on some level, built into all of us. Even though we don't perfectly do it, even though we enforce hierarchies, that can be pretty brutal in some ways. As we've seen in so many countries that still have this, but also we still have a lot of chess here. But we've seen countries that still have some form of again, there is always some form of hierarchy that always has some form of brutal downsides for those on the bottom, and that is something you might really want to fight against, and that has good cause too, right? But the truth is, we do have this thing of oh yeah, once you make it true that you can just seize power this way, the people with the exact opposite opinion to you, they can make the exact same thing happen. The reason you need to have a system that's based on, also, was that correct or was this correct? No, this is good. The reason you need to have a system that's based on agreeing and consenting and having people on board is not a way designed to slow things down and ensure the status quo. It's a thing that we do because, again, even though you might like your set of ideas to be forced on the world because it would work out in the end, there are so many things that I think, if it could just be tried, if someone could just do it, it would be great. It'd be wonderful. There are so many, things that if I was king, there would be things that I would love to do that I think could genuinely make my country a better place. But as someone who isn't king and who doesn't have a country that is begging, hey, you know what, we really need some leadership right now, is that IBX Toycat guy from YouTube available? That's not a cool I expect to have. But, yeah, knowing that your ideas are not the only ideas, and knowing that other ideas are out there, and are, in some cases are going to be better than yours. There are many things that I've kind of thought about and learned about. In this past week alone, I've changed my, mind about some things. Changing your mind is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of growth as a person. I hate the idea that we see so much on social media because it's an echo chamber of your own beliefs. It always is because you only follow things you generally agree with. I try my best to do the opposite as well. But we exist in a world where if you are going to, if you no matter what system you have, it's going to work for people who have the exact opposite opinion to you. So if you're going to make something, just know it's going to work for people who are the exact opposite of you as well. Eventually, even if not right now, even if you think that right now it's your opinion has the majority, we know historically the opinions and the movement of nations has swung back and forth. Look at you. Unless you live in Japan or Singapore, which you don't if you're watching this video, statistically speaking, look at your government and see how it's flipped back and forth between entirely different people, not just from the same party, but from entirely ideologically opposed parties for the last, probably 50 plus years. In the last 50 years, you've probably had at least 4 swings back and forth, and that's pretty wild. That just the entire system by which things were decided, the entire, a person at the helm of it at least changed. Change happens all the time, and it seems like, and those who forget what happens when you make a unfair system for the sake of fairness, let's just say that, because again, if we take a look at literally the fairest system you could have, like, communism, right? Everyone's equal all the time. Everyone likes the idea of it, but then you look into it a little closer and you're like, oh yeah, but the reason it didn't work, even if you think you've got a way to make it work right now, the reason it didn't work is because, people who got to power to make it happen, they became the new elite. They started agreeing that as the ruling elite, they deserve things for themselves. They started agreeing that, like, well, these people who disagree with us, they're bad for the movement. They need to be killed because it's the only way. A lot of people, and like, therefore, the last thing I want to say is like, if you disagree with everything I've said today, that's okay. I don't mind at all. That's, again, I'm talking about my opinions on something. But the one thing everyone should agree on is that information should be accessible and free, and you should be able to look into something for yourself. When someone says you can't have your own opinion, you can't make up your own mind, you can't look into the facts for yourself, here are the facts, I'm telling you them here now. If you disagree with these facts, you are wrong, because there are no other facts in the universe that contradict these at all, especially when we're talking about something that neither of us really knew too much about, because I just learned about these from someone else on social media. When someone says, this is the only way there is no other way for it to be, that's something I'm always wildly suspicious of, and something everyone should be wildly suspicious of. Control of information is the most important thing to control people, and I always used to, because I've read 1984, I've read books where, like, double think, and the idea of, like, a ruling party forcing you to say, things, forcing you to say things that even though you don't believe them, it's like, well, that's dumb, because you can just privately believe them anyway. One of the famous quotes is like, 2 + 2 = 5. It's something, the government forces people into believing. It seems like a super dumb idea, this idea of, like, oh yeah, government, I would never be convinced, no matter how hard you tried, even if you interrogated me, you couldn't get me to be like, oh yeah, I mathematically, personally believe 2 + 2 = 5. You could probably make me say it out loud with enough force, like, sure, if you force me, I will say 2 + 2 = 5, but it doesn't stop what I believe, right? But the danger is not in, that. The danger is not in, because you can't, again, changing people's mind is quite hard. It's something you have to work at and really try at, which is, the hardest skill we all need to learn to improve things, right? But, the real power in, behind this, because 2 + 2 + 5 is actually a real quote that has come, again, from Russia way back in the day. It's like, they had a 5-year plan, and the logic was like, well, over the 5 years, we want to achieve these goals, but the first 2 years went so fast that they're like, well, if we just force people to work as hard as they did those first 2 years, we can get this done in 4. And then they'll be like, well, the 5-year plan actually meant 2 years plus 2 years, and the extra year was the workers' spirit. That was a real message they pushed to the people. It's dumb, but like the idea of, another thing is like making people disappear was a famous thing that a lot of authoritarian governments did in the 20th century. Making someone disappear from a photo doesn't make them disappear from people's minds, but the idea that you can disappear from even something as, concrete as a photo, the fact that, like, if they don't want you there, if you are inconvenient, you will disappear, that drives people into a... that makes people that makes people comply at the very least. And that's bad. When you don't allow people to have their own opinions on things and you force them to comply, it's generally bad. And most of the time, the reality is, like, if you, in your real life, you don't have the force to actually make someone scared, you'll just make them less likely to want to talk to you, which is bad because now you can't, your right opinion, because you, watching this video, you have the correct opinions on everything in the world. That's how it is. I don't know things. It's you, dear viewer, who knows all the things. But, like, if you want people to trust and learn about your opinions, you need to, you need to know them. I think I chose this once, right? I had a friend who literally, I said one thing, even though I said it as a joke. It wasn't, it was like a funny thing. I've dived into this before, and literally he just stopped being friends with me for like 6 years. We spoke again recently, but the whole thing had kind of unwinded that time. His life's not going too well right now. I don't take too much joy in that. Actually, I take a little bit of joy in that. The idea that, like, oh yeah, you decided because he'd read something online that, like, yeah, cut people who disagree with you out of your life. And then he's been in an echo chamber ever since then. It's like, well, even though things really not going well, there are people online that show me this is actually great. This is a-okay. You never want to fall into a world where the only people you speak to are the people who agree with you, because that's great for you as a person, but it's not how you make the world a better place. The way you make a world a better place, like besides like obviously changing hearts and minds, which is important in a consent-based system, but the way you change the world, generally speaking, isn't going to come from your opinions. Your opinions are great, don't get me wrong. They're wonderful things. I love them very much. My opinions are great too. Actually, they suck. My opinions all suck. But the thing that really makes a difference is the people who you individually interact with on an everyday basis. Every day you're going to come. Also, I think we're not going to light up this forest. I think it's going to be the one area we keep unlit. Every day you interact with people, friends, loved ones, close people. Let's call them in your life. Those are the people who you can make the most impact with. I know there are going to be moments where people say, no, the most important thing you can do is XYZ thing that I like, do a thing for me. That's the most important thing in your world. But the most important, like spread that, again, am I helping your life more if I tell you my deep-seated political opinion on, let's spin the wheel, healthcare reform, or am I doing you a better favor if I tell you another high-quality joke? You want to hear another high-quality joke? Like, why did the chicken cross the road? And let me assure you, the punchline to this joke is different to what you're expecting it to be. So, why did the chicken cross the road? It's different to what you're expecting it to be. But, making someone in your life smile, making the day, just doing a small thing for someone you like, takes just as much time as posting that, that tweet, posting that social media post about how much you agree with everyone that you follow, that insert thing here. But in reality, you can make a much bigger impact. And the reality is the power you can have over an entire country worth of people. We're talking about the US, right? 300 million people. I don't even live there. I'm not even eligible to vote in the United States because I am not currently a citizen. I don't have power over you 300 million people. And in reality, no single person ever is. Even the president has a huge limit on his powers, right? That's, he can't be like, candy floss is the currency tomorrow. That's not a power that he has as the president. Fun fact. He also can't change gravity. So, but anyway, no person ever has true control over a huge group of people, which is good because we're all so different and wildly unique. But the group of people you do have the most influence over, at least in terms of, improving their lives, is always going to be the people in your local community. Whatever community you want that to be, even if you hate the people in your real life and it's just your little online group of friends that you play with, the power you have to improve their lives and make their lives better is always going to be, and vice versa, the power they have to help you and for you to mutually help each other's and improve each other's days is always going to be so much higher than what you can have as a thing. And that's not to say everyone should be super apathetic about political issues or whatever. Sure, you can care about those things. Just know that when people try to tell you that is the one thing, that is your one worth in the world, your one body count, your one vote or whatever, the world is just a lot of people doing a lot of things. The majority of nice things that have happened in my life and, things that I appreciated haven't been because someone was asked nicely to do it or was forced, perhaps, if that's how you view governmental systems. But instead, it was just someone who decided to do something nice for me. And that was nice of them, I personally do think that, generally speaking, people are good. I think we see situations that force people into being bad, and if those situations force people to murder or even come close to threatening lives, I think I've said this before, but I am generally anti taking people's lives away. That is my crazy controversial stance that I will take right here publicly. Most people don't deserve to. Actually, there are very few people who I could justify killing. I think I've said this before, but I generally believe people are good. A lot of people don't actually like that stance. So that actually is controversial, funnily enough, because of the world we've gone to, where you have to believe that people either agree with you or are monsters. But, maybe we've just lost the world of nuance. Maybe it will never come back. Maybe it is like everything else where swings and roundabouts. But the most important thing I just want to kind of say here, Also, this can't be correct. Yeah, we gotta... Oh, no, it is correct. But the most important thing I want to say here, above anything else, is just learn from history, because if we don't... If I almost worry that we're doomed to just make the same mistakes over and over again as a species. You know, the biggest threats we actually have facing us are, like, you know, human-wide, and are mostly seem to be, like, just repeating over and over and over again. You know, what happened in the 20s of the last century? Wow, a big financial downturn. What's happening behind our eyes right now? Potentially that same thing. We actually have yet to see the damage yet still. That's the scary thing. Like, everything's okay. Everything's fine. You know, economy's going great. Everything's wonderful. There is nothing to worry about in the slightest, is the message you might feel or see or something. Anyway, you're not. I hope you all enjoyed today's video. I have thoughts and feelings and fears and beliefs just like everyone else. But I think throwing those onto the internet is something I personally am not the biggest believer in. Although I guess, you know, I guess you could say, like, my philosophical beliefs are out there, and I guess you could argue the vague idea of we should, you know, I feel like the basic messages were kind of agreeable, that, like, everyone should generally be on board with information, and we should probably not kill people if we can. And also, yeah, maybe you disagree with the fact that, like, eventually someone will take over your utopian system. No, if I was king, people would just leave me in charge forever. Because actually, no, that's a good way to think about it. If you became king one day, a lot of people are like, well, I could do all the things I'd like to do. If I became king one day, day two, there's going to be a coup for, like, who's this Toycat guy and why is he the monarch? And then as soon as there's a coup, we might go back to the parliamentary system, but maybe we just be like, well, the guy who deposed me gets to be king because he got rid of the weird, you know, like the weird Minecraft YouTuber king, and then maybe we just have kings again. I mean, we already have kings and queens in the UK, but it's a constitution and monarchy. You know, should we dive into that now, or should we just say thank you for watching? Hope you all enjoyed it. As always, I read the comments on these Let's Plays, so assuming it's not something super incendiary, which always gets removed, as you know, feel free to comment down below. If you disliked this, if you felt this was a super deep dive politically, let me know also. But all I want to say right now is that, you know, actually, I don't ever recommend watching Let's Play. I find it, like, to be the worst thing to do. But if you rewatch, like, this last year of Let's Play, it's funny how many of the things that I've already spoken about, like, came up again in, like, the last 2 weeks alone. Just saying, basically a visionary. And that's what makes me worry. I don't want to be a visionary because, like, my worries about the future right now, my current fears, I don't want those to be the real future. I want to live in a world where, like, we work things out. We live a happy world where the majority of people are happy. But, you know, we only know if we get there after we either get there or everyone dies along the way. You know, let's hope it's the second one and not the first one, huh? But yeah, no, thank you very much for watching today's video thing, because man, there are so many, like, weird things where I've just got, like, slightly off torches ruining the grid. It's a whole problem. But you know what isn't a problem? Buying a Toycat plush at it's at makeship.com/collection/IVX Toycat. There are literally 4-ish days left. It ends on Friday, 8 AM GMT. It's a one-time run. They will never be produced again. It is to celebrate the 11-year anniversary of the channel. It's kind of cool. And yeah, pick yourself up one if you want. If you don't, you know, actually, I don't care. I'm the worst salesperson in history. But what's important is that I am in history, and I did research more than what people told me to. Or maybe that's what they want you to believe. Da-da-da-da. Okay, no, goodbye.